Morning. We'd like to welcome everyone to the worship service for this Cortland Church of Christ. Good to see everyone this morning. It's a beautiful fall day. For those who are visiting with us, if you've not been here before, this is your first in a while, we ask if you would step service to talk to people who know you better. And before we get our worship this day, I want to make mention of a few announcements. First of all, those who have birthdays this week, Sarah Magnich and Margot on the 25th and the 29th. Please wish them a happy birthday. There'll be an assembly tonight. I believe that they're having a worship at the Stewards this evening. Is that the 25th?
No, that was last.
That was last. Okay, I apologize. So there'll be an evening assembly here at the building this evening at 6:30. There will not be a last leaders prep session. It says there is one today, but it's actually next Sunday. But there will be a short meeting with the parents and the kids to talk about lads after worship this morning. So we can meet for a few minutes to go over that. Of course, the midweek Bible study will be on Wednesday at 6:30. And there is a Terry tour that will take place next Saturday the 29th. And there's a sign-up sheet on the back table if you'd like to partake in that as well. Next Sunday is a quarterly pastoral Sunday, where I will be teaching and preaching on that day. And on November 6th, we will have our annual Veterans Salute. We requested that our military veterans bring in some memorabilia for the table of remembrance that will be displayed in the vestibule. We want to make mention of those who are sick and those who are able to be with us. Of course, Donna White, Janet Wood, Amy Rossi, Burdette Stewart, and there's a very long list in addition to that as well. So let's keep all of those people in our prayers. Let's go to God in prayer at this time. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Father, we thank you for this beautiful day you've given to us. We thank you for every day of life that you give us upon this earth, Father. Help us to use this day to your glory. Help us to always stand for the truth, to always put you first in our lives, and not let things in this world come before you. Father, you are so great and so wonderful. We thank you for every blessing that you bestow upon us. And help remember that all blessings come from you, and without you we are nothing. Father, be with our country, be with the leaders of our country, and they're prepared to elect a new president. We pray that the right decision will be made and who that person will be, and that the new leader will lead in a way that is in accordance with your will and do things that are pleasing and acceptable in your eyes. Father, be with us and guide us as the decisions are made. Father, as we go through our worship this day, we ask you to help us to focus on you and on Christ, put those things of the world away for a little while. Father, we ask you also to be with all of those who are in the military and armed forces and protective forces that help to keep our country free. We ask you to watch over those men and women and take care of them as only you can. Father, we're so thankful that you gave your only begotten Son to be our Savior, to be the sacrifice for us sinners. Help us never take for granted what he did in leaving his heavenly home to come and be a perfect example for each of us, and of course to give his life that day at Calvary for each of us sinners, that we may have a hope of eternal life with you in heaven if we are obedient to you, Father. We cannot thank you enough for all you do, Father, how you bless us, and we ask you to watch over us and guide us in all that we do. We thank you for Jesus, Father, of course. We thank you for allowing us forth anniversary today. We thank you for hearing our prayers. We thank you for answering our prayers. We love you, praise you, we give you all the glory. We ask this prayer through your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Morning. We're going to start with number 286. Number 286. That's better. 286. Wonderful story of love, tell it to me again. Wonderful story of love, with the immortal strain. Angels with rapture announce it, shepherds with wonder receive it. Sinner, oh, won't you believe it? Wonderful story of love.
Please bow with me. Dear Heavenly Father, we'd like to come to you this time thanking you so much for letting us live in a country where we can worship you freely. Help us, Lord, that as we're in this service today, that we pay attention and be inspired by Terry's words. Help them, Lord, to try to help us to listen to what he's saying and take something from the sermon that would help us be better Christians, help us to be examples to others so that they might also like to live for you. Help, Lord, those that may be sitting in the service today or anywhere that are questioning you, that are not sure about you. Please help to soften their heart, Lord, and to listen to you and to take your words that they might also become Christians. We thank you, Lord, for all you've given us. Thank you for all the monetary things that you've given us. We know that all good things come from you. Help all those, Lord, that are on our prayer list, all those that are suffering. Please guide the doctors so that they may do good works and help heal those that are sick. Help their families also, help them through the hard times. Help all those that are serving this great country, Lord. Help them be strong and safe as they protect it. We thank you so much, Lord, for most of all, when you sent your Son to die on the cross for forgiveness of our sins. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
During the offering this morning, we will sing the first two verses of 376. That's the offering song, 376. And before the Lord's Supper, we'll sing And Can It Be?
Praise my God, would die for me.
Good morning. We have now come to part of the worship where we partake in the Lord's Supper, where we take the bread which represents Christ's body and through the vine which represents the blood that's shed on the cross for our sins. Let us take our remembrance of that when we take both days today. Let us give thanks to the bread. Our Father in heaven, we want to thank you for this beautiful fall day you've given to us to come here and worship you and learn more about you and worship your name. Father, as we take part in the bread today, please help us to remember that body that was crudely brought about and damaged and died for our sins, Father. Father, we just want to thank you so much for sending your Son to die on that cruel cross for our sins. Please be with us and help us to remember that for the day. In Jesus' name, prayer. Amen. Let's give thanks as we partake in the through the vine that represents Christ's blood. Our Father in heaven, we once again come to you, Father, thanking you for all that you've done, how you bless us. Father, we want to pray as we partake of this through the vine, that we do it in a right and respectful manner, and remember the blood that was shed for your Son, that he died on that cruel cross. Father, please be with us and help us, like I said, to take it in a right and respectful manner. We want to ask the Spirit of your Son, Jesus Christ. We have now come to the part of worship where it's time to give back a portion of what we've earned this week, of what God has blessed us with. We are told that we should give with a cheerful and open heart. Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we come to you at this time, thanking you for all that you have done and how you blessed us, Father, the things you give us, our health, our food, our clothing, our homes. Father, please help us to give back at this time in a right, respectful manner with an open and cheerful heart. Father, we want to thank you so much for all you do and how you bless us, protect us, all that you have done for us, Father. I want to ask the Spirit of your Son, Jesus Christ.
He paid a debt he did not owe. I owed a debt I could not pay. I needed someone to wash my sins away. And now I sing a brand new song, Amazing Grace. Christ Jesus paid the debt that I could never pay. He paid that debt at Calvary. He cleansed my soul and set me free. I'm glad that Jesus did all my sins erase. I now can sing a brand new song, Amazing Grace. Christ Jesus paid the debt that I could never pay.
Our song of invitation this morning will be What the Lord Has Done. That will be only on the screen. That will be after the sermon this morning. Before our Bible reading service, we'll sing the greatest command, number 448. And it will, and as the slide goes on, it will add each part in as it goes on, provided I put it together correctly. Something always goes wrong.
He 29 through 35. Then the Spirit said to Philip, "Go near and overtake this chariot." So Philip ran to him and heard him reading the prophet Isaiah and said, "Do you understand what you are reading?" And he said, "How can I, unless someone guides me?" And he asked Philip to come up and sit with him. The place in the scripture which he read was this: "He was led as a sheep to the slaughter, and as a lamb before its shearer is silent, so he opened not his mouth. In his humiliation his justice was taken away. And who will declare his generation? For his life is taken from the earth." So the eunuch answered Philip and said, "I ask you, of whom does the prophet say this? Of himself or of some other man?" Then Philip opened his mouth, and beginning at the scripture, preached Jesus to him.
Thank you, Chris, for that reading, and Stephen for the songs. And children's Bible time is meeting in the back for the little ones. You would like to take advantage of that? How many of you would consider yourselves to be an avid sports fan? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you have tickets to the World Series? I kind of feel the same way. Gail Wheeler and Larry have two sons. Dennis is the oldest, Darren younger. And they're both young married men with children and nice jobs. Dennis now lives in Atlanta area, and Darren and his wife recently moved a little bit south of Lexington, Kentucky, that area. And Dennis called me, might have been yesterday, or it was the day before yesterday, on Friday, and he said he was actually talking a little bit softer than normal because he was at work. And he said, "Hey Terry," he said, "you want to go to the World Series?" And I said, "Dennis?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to go to the World Series." I said, "What's up?" And he said, "Well," he said, "Darren has tickets." And he said, "And we've got 8 of them." And he said, "If you want one, you can have it." And I'm thinking, this is too good to be true. And then I said, like what are we talking about price-wise? And he said, $400. And I said, $400. Well, that's really not that bad. But then I said, "Where is the ticket?" And he said, "Well, it'll be up there close to the drummer." The guy in the bleachers that beats on the drum all the time. Evidently, and the Wheeler boys are exceptional in many ways. They're kind of entrepreneurish. And Darren, when the Tribe got into the World Series, I suppose this might have happened even before they won that game, maybe as that game was about to come to a close. Darren knew that the only way really to get a ticket, Rob, was to be a season ticket holder for next year. So he lives in Kentucky. Now this is an avid fan, just in case you weren't there. So he went online and bought season tickets for next year. Now it's like 80 games, probably at $50 each at the very least. So he bought 80 tickets to next year's game so that he could buy World Series tickets. And then he bought 8 World Series tickets at $200 and something each. But his scheme is, his plan is, and there's nothing illegal about this, he's going to make enough money selling the World Series tickets to pay for his whole season next year. At least that's what he's dreaming. Well, Dennis said he's prepared to donate some to charity if he needs to, but that's what it means to be an avid Indians fan. I passed on the ticket. I just couldn't see it. My brother-in-law, Mark, said, "Oh man, you need to go." He said, "It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience." And I reminded him that I've been privileged to experience that twice already in my life. Years ago, Doris Coates' son, Craig, came to me. He worked Packard, Delphi, and he said, a bunch of us, this was when the Indians were in the old stadium before Jacobs Field, now Progressive Field, and he said, several of us guys are going together and we're going to get 2 season tickets so that we can get tickets when Jacobs Field opens. So I bought into that, and Jeannie and I enjoyed a couple seasons of, we had 2 tickets to a couple. When you get a bunch of guys, it's not like you have to buy 80 of them yourself. You just break them up and you might have 3 or 4 games in the course of it. Anyway, we got World Series tickets as part of that package offer. So we were able to go to the 95, was it Atlanta Braves, and then the 97 was the Miami Marlins. Well, okay, we're not here to talk about baseball. I just wanted to check and see how your fan you were. And just in case Darren hasn't sold any tickets, if he still has any left, you let me know and I'll give you his phone number. You might have a bleacher seat, probably right now going for about $600. I want to close our sermon series on reflections on the cross by returning to that text that Chris read from this morning, and that is Acts chapter 8. So let me invite you, if you would, to turn in your New Testaments to Acts chapter 8, and we'll be reading together some from that text in just a little bit. As many stories in the Bible, this is an abbreviated text, and it's an account of the preaching of the gospel to the Ethiopian treasurer. And as I said last Sunday, and maybe you feel the same way, this is one of my favorite stories from the book of Acts. The book of Acts is filled with what we call conversion accounts, where someone gives their life to Jesus, stories about how someone is converted. And this is one of my favorites in all of the book of Acts. Last Sunday, I spoke about the silence of the Lamb. And in speaking on that, we went to that prophecy of Isaiah in Isaiah 53, which is the very text that this Ethiopian is going to be reading from. We'll tell you more about that in just a moment. But Isaiah's prophecy is, to us, it may seem very, very clear what he was talking about. But before New Testament times, often the prophets would speak forth prophecies, and they didn't understand themselves what they were talking about. It was given to them by God, and they just said it as God gave it. And this prophecy is about a suffering servant of God who will take up the role of the sacrificial lamb and offer himself for the people. And wedged in the middle of Isaiah, what we now know of or call Isaiah chapter 53, wedged in the middle of that wonderful chapter is verse 7. And here's what it says again, if you were not with us last Sunday. Isaiah 53, verse 7. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that is silent before its shears, so he did not open his mouth. So last Sunday in our sermon, we asked the question, why was Jesus silent? If you missed last Sunday for whatever reason and would like to explore this topic, we invite you to go to our website and look at the sermon and study with us. We could speculate as to the answer to this question, why was Jesus silent during his trial? But all we need to do to get a biblical answer to this, speculation might be interesting sometimes, but it's not the best way to answer questions, especially if you can allow the Word of God to shed light on this question itself. And if we go to 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 23, here's what it says. While being reviled, Jesus did not revile in return. While suffering, or when suffering, Jesus kept entrusting himself to him who judges righteously. This word entrusting means yielding or surrendering oneself to the decision of another. So what we determined, and I'm just reviewing a little bit and then we'll get into the new sermon for this morning. The silence of Jesus was not weakness. It was not a sign of weakness. It was not weakness in any way. Rather, it was meekness. And this may be new to you because people, over the years, I'm amazed sometimes to find out how some words become so corrupted. And the word meekness never meant weakness. It never meant weakness. From the day that the word was born, so to speak, it meant power, but power under control. Like a mighty draft horse, an all-powerful draft horse that has a bridle and will just go anywhere he leads. It's power under control is what meekness is. So the silence of Jesus was strength, and the strength was empowered by a strong faith in the assurance that his Father was in control of his circumstances. So when Jesus stood before Caiaphas, the high priest, and Pilate, the Roman governor, and King Herod, and they interrogated him and asked him questions, he could stand silently, entrusting that God was in control of whatever decision would be made, that God would see to it that his will was worked. Meekness, then, is a willingness to yield oneself, to surrender oneself, to entrust oneself to Almighty God. It's one of the hardest lessons to learn in all of discipleship. We can talk about the meekness of Jesus, and we can marvel. But in this series on the cross, Reflections on the Cross, we're coming to see that there's much in the cross that's expected to be in us as well. And this is certainly the case where we can say that meekness, it was not just a quality that Jesus exhibited during his trial. Meekness is at the heart of discipleship. God expects it of us. This meekness is essential if we are to be bearers of the cross of Christ. I think most of us would acquiesce, if that word is not in your vocabulary, all it means is to agree without argumentation. You're not going to get an argument from me if you say this. We acquiesce to it. We could acquiesce that the cross of Christ is the means of salvation. If we did a survey and we said, how did you come to be saved? Most of us, the first thing that comes to our mind we would say, Jesus died for me. It was the cross, by virtue of the cross, that we have come to be saved. What we sometimes fail to realize is that the cross of Christ is also not only the means of our salvation, but it is the model of our sanctification. Now, if that's a little complicated, let me just tell you what that means. All the word sanctification means is how we live, how our lives are set apart for God. It's one thing to acknowledge that we are saved by virtue of his cross, but it's quite another thing to acknowledge that his cross shows us how to walk and how to live as we aim to be a disciple of Jesus. Many of us are eager to reap the benefits of the cross. That's how we come to be saved, through the work of Jesus on the cross. But we're not quite so excited about shouldering the burdens and the responsibilities of the cross. And regarding this point, I'll simply point you again to 1 John chapter 2 and verse 6, and I'll quote it this time from the New International Version, where the language is so plain, you can't mix it up, what he's saying. This is John writing, and John says, this is how we know that we're in him. The him is Jesus. This is how we know that we're in Christ Jesus. Whoever claims to live in him must walk as Jesus walked. Jesus denied himself. Philippians 2 and verse 7. The term used there is he emptied himself. He took up his cross, the cross, and he died. Yet we read Luke 9:23, and we read that God calls on us to do the same. Whoever wishes to be my disciple must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow after me. Jesus was crucified. We too must be crucified with Christ. We don't sing it much anymore, but there's a song in our book. We learned it at camp a few years ago. And it's right out of Galatians 2:20. I have been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, it's not I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life that I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and delivered himself up for me. Paul says, I have been crucified with Christ. It wasn't just restricted to Paul. That's part of discipleship. Jesus humbled himself and he became a servant. Again, from Philippians 2 and verse 8. But yet we hear Jesus saying to his disciples that if we want to follow after him, that we must become servant of all. Jesus became a servant. We must be a servant. That's in Mark 10 and verse 44. Paul says something rather odd in Galatians chapter 6 and verse 17. He says, I bear in my body the brand marks of Jesus. And we had one sermon in this series where I asked you, what kind of marks do you have that would show others that you're a follower of Jesus? Jesus forgave others. And this forgiving spirit also has to reside in us. One of the most challenging words that Jesus ever says is, if you forgive others their transgressions, your Father will forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their transgressions, your Father in heaven will not forgive you. Read from Matthew chapter 18, verses 33 and 35 in particular on that. And finally, by way of review, this resolute meekness allowed Jesus to keep entrusting himself to the Father. And that's what we have to do. All of our lives, through all ages, ups and downs, high points, low points, all of the many transitions of life, we've got to learn to keep entrusting ourselves to the Father. It's a hard lesson to learn. Paul prayed repeatedly that whatever was his thorn in the flesh, that God might remove it. He prayed 3 times asking God to remove it. And each time God declined. And then finally God told him that my grace is sufficient for you. And Paul finally got the message. Then he said, therefore I will be well content with distresses and persecutions and all of these many negative things that might come our way. And then he summed it up with that great text that is sometimes hard to wrap our minds around of. He said, for I've learned that when I am weak, that's when I'm strong. Sounds like a paradox or a riddle. How is it that we're strong when we're weak? And what Paul was meaning was simply that when I am driven to my knees and I can't figure out my problems and I need to look heavenly for God's help, that's when I'm really strong. When I try to do it on my own. Well, let's read from Acts chapter 8 and verse 26 and following. An angel of the Lord spoke to Philip, saying, "Arise and go south to the road that descends from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is a desert road." And he arose and went, and behold, there was an Ethiopian eunuch, a court official of Candace, queen of the Ethiopians, who was in charge of all her treasure. And he had come to Jerusalem to worship. And he was returning and sitting in his chariot and was reading the prophet Isaiah. And the Spirit said to Philip, "Go up and join this chariot." And when Philip had run up, he heard him reading Isaiah the prophet and said, "Do you understand what you're reading?" And he said, "Well, how could I except or unless someone guides me?" And he invited Philip to come up and sit with him. Now the passage of Scripture which he was reading was this: "He was led as a sheep to slaughter, and as a lamb before its shearer is silent, so he does not open his mouth. In humiliation his judgment was taken away. Who shall relate his generation? For his life is removed from the earth." And the eunuch answered Philip and said, "Please tell me, of whom does the prophet say this? Of himself or someone else?" Let's stop there for a minute. We first meet this man named Philip earlier in Acts chapter 6 and verse 6, a couple chapters earlier. This Philip is not Philip, who's one of 12 apostles. Some of you memorized them. Peter, Andrew, James, John, Philip, Bartholomew. This is not one of the 12 apostles. This Philip is one of the 7. Acts chapter 6 and verse 1, we read how the early church in the city of Jerusalem, evidently they had many widows, Hellenistic or Grecian widows, widows who were Gentiles as opposed to being Jewish. And for some reason, and this tells us maybe that things don't always go smoothly in church as we might plan, but these Hellenistic widows were being slighted. And finally, it came to the congregation's attention, and there was a little bit of a wrinkle about it. So the apostles and the elders of the church decided to ask the congregation, let's appoint some men to help out in the ministry to the Grecian widows. And one of the names that was selected that's recorded in Acts 6 is this man named Philip. The next time we encounter Philip is in the time of the diaspora, or as I sometimes call it, diaspora. I've heard it pronounced both ways. That's just a word that means the dispersion or the scattering of the saints of the first century. And we're told about this in Acts chapter 8, verse 1 and following. Verses 4 and 5 says this: "Therefore, those who had been scattered," that means driven from the city of Jerusalem, from Judea, driven away from their homeland because of persecution, those who had been scattered went into hiding. No, it doesn't say that. Those who had been scattered went about preaching the word. And Philip went down to the city of Samaria and began proclaiming Christ to them. In the interest of being like the early church, that's one of our goals as a church of Christ, is to be like the early saints if we can, in good ways. In the interest of being like the early church, it's worth noting that you didn't have to be a preacher to be one who was engaged in sharing the gospel. Here, this is a case, although he's not called a deacon technically, he he's one of these servants chosen by the church to wait on tables. He's been given a very specific assignment. Take care of the Grecian widows. Help them in their daily meals. But he still has a desire to teach others about Christ. So if we can ever recapture this mindset and let it permeate our church family, we will grow in ways that not only transcends our expectations, but maybe supersedes our hopes and dreams. Everybody thinking about how can I tell someone else about Jesus. The first half of Acts chapter 8 tells us that Philip was having great success in Samaria. Here's what it says in verse 6. Multitudes with one accord were giving attention to the things that were being said by Philip. That's quite a compliment to any preacher of the gospel. Verse 12, when they believed Philip preaching the good news about the kingdom of God in the name of Christ, they were being baptized, men and women alike. So there's a great thing going on in Samaria. Philip's preaching, he has their attention. Many people are responding and being baptized to Christ. But Acts chapter 8 and verse 26 and 27 tells us that an angel of the Lord spoke to Philip and said, leave Samaria and go south to that road that descends down towards Gaza. It's a desert road. And it goes on to say that he arose and went. The desert road is not so much talking about a desert with sand and palm trees, although there may have been that there, but it's more the idea of a desolate road. It's out in the middle of nowhere. From there down to Egypt is just a big, well, it is a sand pit of sorts. But the strange thing about this particular Gaza Strip here is it's in a barren land, a foreboding land. It's not your typical Blue Ridge Parkway, Don Davis, one of the most beautiful drives in our country. This is not the kind of road that you take just to say, oh man, I can't wait to. This is barren. This is out in the middle of nowhere, but it's traveled a lot. It was one of the heaviest traveled roads in the whole Fertile Crescent area. The story of Philip is an illustration of us trusting God's providence. Philip could have argued with God. He could have said, I'm really doing a good work in Samaria. I mean, the people are listening like I've never had an audience like this before where they're really paying attention. And nobody falls asleep during my sermons, and they're really, I'm talking to Dick Moss when I say that. Dick Moss watched the Ohio State game last Saturday night, stayed up too late, and then he's a snowbird, so he hates the cold. Well, we had the air blowing, so Dick covered up with his coat, and he was covered up with his sleeping around. It doesn't happen every once in a while, but when it does, I feel the need to point it out so that it doesn't happen. Dick's got tough skin. In fact, he came to me and confessed with apology. So Philip might have argued at this point, but he didn't. He just listened to what God told him. God instructed him to go, and he went. And what a difference it made. Although we could say, well, he's doing great in Samaria. Why leave a whole crowded multitude of responses to go to a desert road to meet up with one guy? There's a man named Irenaeus who was a Christian leader in the late part of the 2nd century, and he says about this Ethiopian that he went back home and he became a missionary, and great things happened as a result of his conversion. And this is a picture, isn't it? Dramatic so, of the power of God plus one. God can take one man named Philip and do great things. He can take one man named Philip and have Philip preach to one man, Ethiopian, and it can just result in wonderful things when we're willing to let God guide us. So this Ethiopian eunuch was an honorable man. Now that's the first time I think I've used the word eunuch here, but the text says he was. And I don't want to get too graphic here, but an Ethiopian eunuch was sometimes in days gone by, kings and queens wanted to be sure that the people serving them in key positions kept their mind on their work. So a queen didn't want a court official who would have sexual interest in her, and the king especially didn't want to have a court official who was hitting on his queen. So sometimes the prerequisite to obtain the job was that you would agree to become a eunuch. And basically that was the act of castration. You would put your sexual desires aside so that you could serve. Now that tells us something about the seriousness of this man. And he was an honorable man. He was the court official for Candace. Candace wasn't her name, it was her title. It was kind of like Pharaoh. It was all of the queens. She was the queen of Ethiopia. And in fact, it goes on to say in verse 27a that he was the treasurer. He was the one in charge of the queen's treasury. He was from Ethiopia, down in Egypt, on the Nile River area. And he evidently was a devout man. He was what we might call a God-fearing man. He probably grew up in a culture that was known for false gods everywhere you looked. Gods everywhere you looked along the Nile. That was common in those days. But this man came to be in pursuit of the one true God, Jehovah God. I don't know how he came to know Jehovah God, or maybe he was just seeking to know Jehovah God. But he had traveled a long distance to go to Jerusalem and worship. Look at your map sometime. From Ethiopia to Jerusalem is probably 500 miles. It's further than going from here to Nashville. And it wasn't pretty along the way necessarily. It was some pretty tough roadway. He had traveled a long distance. His journey probably involved 1,000 miles round trip, and it probably took weeks, if not months, to travel. Now, I don't know how you calculate this. How do you figure out how much a chariot can travel in a day? This chariot was not your Ben-Hur kind of a chariot. It was more a wagon, covered wagon. You don't go traveling 500 miles through the desert on a Ben-Hur chariot. You have some shelter, and you probably have all kinds of supplies with you and whatever. But while he's in Jerusalem to worship, I got hung up on trying to calculate, okay, if humans walk 3 miles an hour, how fast does a horse walk? And if a horse walks 5 miles an hour or 10 miles an hour, how long can you keep that up? In the desert, day after day. Well, you try to do the homework. It's not easy to figure out, so we'll say it. It took him weeks to get where he was going. And then who knows how long to recover. But while he's in Jerusalem, he's worshiping God, the story tells us. and he purchases a copy of the scroll of Isaiah, probably one of the most popular and cherished or desired scrolls of all the Old Testament. And now he's returning, and this again tells you that this is more than just that other kind of a chariot. He's reading from the text of Isaiah. Well, if you're standing in a chariot holding the reins, you're not going to be able to read from a scroll. So he evidently has somebody who is his driver, and maybe he's sitting in the back under a little teepee, a covered wagon, reading from the text of Isaiah. And he's, when Philip joins up to meet him, he's reading out loud. That's not unusual when you're reading in a foreign language, especially when you're reading Aramaic. That's what he was reading from a Aramaic translation of an Old Testament Hebrew passage, Isaiah 53. So Philip came up to him and he said, "Do you know what you're reading? Do you understand what you're reading?" And we totally missed this reading it in English, but in the Greek text, it's really a play on words. It's really, do you know what you know again? Do you understand what you're reading? So the Ethiopian was a man of considerable standing, but as the story tells us, he was also very humble. He responded by saying, "How can I understand it except someone guides me?" And what a combination. Somebody who is humble and willing to learn, coupled with someone who is eager and able to teach or to give instruction. And verse 32, and we'll hasten on through this, states that the passage of Scripture which he was reading was this. It's what we talked about last Sunday. He was led as a sheep to slaughter, and as a lamb is silent before its shears, so he did not open his mouth. And the treasurer asked him if he understood what he was reading. He said, "No, I don't." But then verse 34, he says, "Tell me," the treasurer says to Philip, "Tell me, who is the prophet speaking about? Is he talking about himself, or is he talking about someone else?" And the text tells us that Philip opened his mouth, and beginning with this passage, this very passage of Scripture, Isaiah 53 and verse 7, he preached Jesus to him. And that's all we're told. I have never been more desirous of having the text of a sermon as wanting to know, to have a copy of Philip's sermon that day to the Ethiopian. But it's not given. All we're told is that he preached Jesus to him, beginning at that passage. We don't have the text of the sermon, but we can make some logical deductions. Because verse 35 says, he opened his mouth, beginning with this very passage of Scripture, he preached Jesus to him. And then verse 36 says, as they went along the road, they came to some water. And the eunuch said, "Look, water, what keeps me or prevents me from being baptized?" And as I study with people personally and in this group, I would say, who brought up the subject of baptism? The only answer that makes sense is to rightly conclude that baptism is part of preaching Jesus. It says he preached Jesus to him. The next thing you know, the Ethiopian wants to know, why can't I be baptized? Well, who brought up baptism? Well, I'm assuming that Philip did. And I'm assuming that that's part of what it means to preach Jesus. So he answered and said to him, Philip said to him, "If you believe with all of your heart, you may." And the Ethiopian said, "I do. And I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God." And he called for the chariot to stop, and they both went down into the water, Philip and the eunuch, and he baptized him. Now, typically in our fellowship, and we're pretty strong on wanting to just say what the Bible says, our fellowship has done well to emphasize several subpoints in this text. One is the urgency of baptism. When you come to believe that Jesus is the Christ, there's no reason to put it off. And sometimes we're faulty or guilty of this. If ever there was an occasion where the Ethiopian could have said, you know, I think I understand what you're saying, but I'd like to get back home and see some of my friends and then find a setting other than this desert up here. No, it was immediate. I mean, he said, here's water. Why can't I be baptized? And the second thing that we understand here is the serious commitment that baptism involves. Baptism is for those who really, really believe. It's not something you just do on a whim. And thirdly, and we're strong on this, baptism is immersion or a submersion. It's not sprinkling. In the text, that's the only explanation. They called for the chariot to stop. Both Philip and the eunuch went down into the water, and he immersed them. But there's another point, and it's not so much a sub-point as it is the primary point. The scroll of Isaiah, chapter 53, is a prophecy about how Jesus died to self. And this is precisely and most prominently or preeminently what baptism is all about. It is a death with Christ as one dies to self. Now, if you don't understand that about baptism, you don't understand New Testament baptism. Listen, 3 verses, and then we're going to bring it to a end. Romans 6, verses 3 and 4. Do you not know that all of us who have been baptized into Christ Jesus have been baptized into his death? Therefore, we have been buried with him through baptism into death, in order that as Christ was raised from the dead through the glory of the Father, so too we might walk in newness of life. Galatians 2:20, which I quoted earlier, Paul said, I have been crucified with Christ. He didn't mean literally on a wooden beam. He goes on to say, it's not I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And then Galatians 6 and verse 14, may it never be, Paul said, that I should boast, except in the cross of Jesus Christ, through which the world has been crucified to me, and I to the world. So, in summary, it's good to underscore the urgency of baptism. If you've not been baptized and you're ready to be baptized, there's not reason for you to keep putting it off. There's an urgency to it. You could die today. You could die tomorrow. It's also good to teach that baptism requires a really serious commitment. And it's also important to teach that baptism is an immersion. The language of Scripture is we are buried with Christ. But what we must not fail to teach is that baptism is a burial symbolized by a watery grave. It speaks of a death. You can't, I can't, you can't, none of us can preach Jesus and not tell others about the need to follow in his paths, in his path. That's the preaching of the gospel. Jesus lived a crucified life, so must we if we are his disciples. Sometimes somebody asks me, what's the essence of your job? And that's kind of hard to describe as a preacher. But I suppose if I had to try to boil it down, I would say that at least one of the most, if not the most important aspect of my job as a preacher of the gospel is to help others prepare for the hereafter. And the best thing that I can tell you or anybody else the most biblical thing that I can tell you that you need to do to get ready for the hereafter is to tell you that you must die before you die. Sometimes we view baptism as a birthday party. You know, that born anew language. And it is. It's in our baptism that we are born anew. But our baptism is also a funeral. It's where we die. It's where we die with Christ in a watery grave so that God can bring us to new life. Let's bow. Father, we thank you for this lesson today. And we pray for all of us that we will, if we have not been baptized, that we will think about it very, very seriously and feel a sense of urgency and want to take care of it and to be right with you. And for those of us who have been baptized, Father, many of us, we pray that you would remind us in this lesson that we have died. And that when we came up out of that water, that we are a new creation. And so we ask that you help us to keep our minds and hearts focused on the things above. That's our prayer through Christ our Lord, we ask. Amen. Thank you for your attention today. I'm sorry I was a little bit long-winded. If you did nap, I hope you enjoyed the nap. It's a very safe place to take a nap. If we can help you this morning in your life being right with the Lord, let us know. If you've never been baptized before, we will help you. If you have been baptized, let's all resolve as we sing together to live for the Lord. Let's stand and sing.
Let the weak say, I am strong. Let the poor say, I am rich. Let the blind say, I can see. It's what the Lord has done in me. Let the weak say, I am strong. Let the poor say, I am rich. Let the blind say, I can see. It's what the Lord has done in me. Hosanna, Hosanna, to the Lamb that was slain. Hosanna, Hosanna, Jesus died and rose again. Hosanna, Hosanna, to the Lamb that was slain. Hosanna, Hosanna, Jesus died and rose again. Into the river I will wade. There my sins are washed away. From the heavens mercy stream of the Savior's love for me. I will rise from waters deep into the saving arms of God. I will sing salvation songs. Jesus Christ has set me free. Hosanna, Hosanna, to the Lamb that was slain. Hosanna,
think it's 3. Can you double check? Make sure I'm right. First 3 verses of 416, number 416. As a reminder, we are meeting here tonight, so hopefully we'll see you all here later.
Sweetly, Lord, have we heard thee calling, come, follow me. And we see where thy footprints falling, lead us to thee. Footprints of Jesus that make the pathway glow. We will follow the steps of Jesus where'er they go. Though they lead o'er the cold, dark mountains, seeking His sheep, or along life's lowest fountains, helping the weak. Footprints of Jesus that make the pathway glow. We will follow the steps of Jesus where'er they go. If they lead through the temple holy, preaching the word, or in homes of the poor and lowly, serving the Lord. Footprints of Jesus that make the pathway glow. We will follow the steps of Jesus where'er they go.
Our God and Father, as we close out the service and praise you, we ask that you instill in our hearts a desire to bring Christ to so many around us. We pray that you will give us the confidence and the courage to die to self and to live for you. And we thank you for Jesus, who makes it all possible. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
I know, and I heard that, it gave you an idea. The next thing I heard, no, I was out. Dan walked by.